Welcome back. We have Shawn Ulmer joining us on the show. She is the nursery manager at Knapp's, and it's great to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. It's hard to feel motivated right now about planting bulbs, but in fact, the time is drawing close.
It is. And if it's anything like what happened with the tulips this year, if we're going to celebrate Canada Day, you need to get your colors early.
Right, and so those colors being
red and white, of course.
And we're looking at some of the bulbs here on the screen that are red and white. How does this all work? There's different types of bulbs that you've brought in today.
These are all considered summer bloomers. The tulips that we planted in the fall are spring bloomers. So that's the difference. These ones, some of these you can leave in the ground over winter, but a lot of them you have to lift.
Okay.
So
we have gladiolas, dahlias, and lilies, and so there's an order to this.
Yeah, the lilies we can plant outside as soon as the ground is diggable. You know, the snow's got to go, it's got to dry somewhat, then we can plant them, and then they will grow, and they generally bloom June, July. It's going to depend on your area. They kind of like afternoon shade, and that will extend the blossom time. I find if they're planted in full sun, which they can take, that the blossoms, when we get that real big heat, they tend to go really quickly.
Sure.
So a little bit of afternoon shade.
Okay.
The dahlias, you can plant them in containers now, about 8 weeks before the last frost. And so I always tell people that the last frost is somewhere from mid-May to the end of May, depending, you know, if you're in the valley or you're up higher. They can also be planted out directly, but you have to wait till after the last frost for that. So some people get anxious, and you can just pop them into containers now and keep them nice and warm and let them grow, and that'll help. The gladiolas, on the other hand, you plant them directly outside.
Okay.
And all three of them make very nice cut flowers. So you can get a little bit of both. You can leave them in the ground for a nice display, but you can also cut some and have them bring them into the house.
Right. Now, are these perennials because they're going to come back year after year, red and white, or no?
Yeah, the lilies for sure will outside, leave them over winter, and as long as they're planted in the ground. If they're in containers, then you'll have to store them for the winters. The dahlias and the gladiolas will need to be dug in the fall. Usually people do it after a light frost, and then they dig them, and you store the dahlias, you dig them and store them, you kind of allow them to dry a little bit, and then store them in peat moss. The key with the dahlias is you don't want to let them dry out over winter, so you don't store them in your furnace room.
Right, because that's a fast way to dry them out.
Yeah, you don't want them gooey wet or anything like that, but just a cool and dark location.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about best results. I know when I've planted bulbs, I've had a few run-ins with doing things improperly. So when it comes time to actually put them in the ground, what are we talking about in terms of fertilizer, the way you plant them? Is there a wrong way to put the actual bulb into the ground? Like
most of the bulbs, they'll have, you can see where a root zone is, and sometimes there's a bit of a peaked area. When in doubt, I always tell people you can always plant it sideways. Because if you're not positive which way it goes, you kind of, if you do it sideways, the plant will find it.
Okay.
If you plant it upside down, they still will find their way. They just kind of grow down and then back up. It just takes them a little bit longer.
To poke back up.
So, you know, when you buy them, they have very nice instructions on the back with a little picture showing you which way. They'll tell you how deep to plant them and how to space them. Now, the gladiolas, all three of them are quite tall plants. So the ideal place is not a super windy location.
Okay.
Gladiolas have a tendency, people will stake them or grow them against a fence, something like that. So plant them with good organic material, and that can be manure. We have sea soil, we have Knapp's planter mix. There's all these things. You mix them in with the soil, plant them with bone meal. That's all you need really at the moment. And then water them in. So the water is very good. You need to make sure that the soil is moist, but not drippy wet. You don't want to plant in really, really wet soil.
Okay, for best results.
Yes,
Excellent. Wouldn't it be nice if everybody did a little bit of red and white this year?
it would.
It would be. It'd be lovely to see everybody paying tribute to our 150 years. Big birthday. So thank you, Sean, for being here. It's not always easy to do bulbs. You have to sort of know what you're doing. Thankfully, the experts at Art Knapps are here for our input, and Sean is an expert for sure. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions that you might have, artknappskamloops.ca. It's always a treat to go down in person, of course, and have the experience of wandering through. It's a lovely place to go. So you can do that as well. Get inspired for spring. It has to arrive eventually. We're back in 2 minutes. Stay with us.